together, one of the 17 men that put together. They left us out for 100 years. They always show pictures of 12 Caucasians.
All right, welcome everybody to the regular city council meeting for December the 6th, 2022. Can I get a report from the closed session, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, council considered the items listed in closed session, including litigation and performance evaluation, and there was no reportable action.
All right, thank you, sir. I'll now call the meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Sandu.
Here.
Councilmember Papineau.
Here.
Councilmember Vandenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Lozano.
Here.
Mayor Farmer.
Here. If everyone would now please join us in a silent prayer followed by the flag salute. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tina, can you please read our replay statement?
This meeting of the Galt City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting replays Friday, December 9th at 9 a.m. and Saturday, December 10th at 9 a.m. This meeting can also be viewed at youtube.com/MetroCable14.
All right, thank you. At the request of the city manager, we are actually going to be pulling items F, G, and H this evening and moving those to the December 20th meeting. This would be the certification of the election results and the reorganization of the city council. So those will be moved to the December 20th meeting. So with that, we'll be moving on to item I, which is agenda approval, additions, and/or deletions. Is there anything else from council? All right. Then we'll move on to item J, presentations. First presentation this evening is going to be from the Galt Community of Character Coalition, Pride in Community, Caring, and Compassion Award.
Timing. So my name's Gail Weber. Good afternoon, council, mayor, audience. I'm here to present a couple of awards. One is for Pride in Community, and the other one is for Caring and Compassion. I'm honored to do this, as both these people I consider good friends. And the first one I'm going to read is for Rich Lozano, and he was nominated by Mark King. So this will be I'll present the award through the perspective of Mark's perspective. So Rich Lozano is a true role model of Pride in Community. Currently in my third term as Sunrise Rotary Club president, I have witnessed firsthand the pride in community Rich takes in his daily interactions with others, the various committees he serves on, and of course the very important role he has held as councilman for the city of Galt. In his prior capacities in education and law enforcement, Rich has spent the better part of 30 years in helping to nurture youth and citizens in general to take responsibility for and pride in their community. Rich can be counted on to participate in all things we take pride in, from helping clean up a senior's yard to attending the Saturday market where he and his family are quick to interact with the citizens. His dedication to our Rotary Club has been exceptional. Part of taking pride in anything is showing up. Rich has has that down to a science. Rich Lozano is an amazing asset to the Galt community and a shining example of one who embodies pride in community. I am proud to call him also my friend. And I said this was nominated by Mark King. And we have a certificate for you. Mark, you're the one that nominated.
I just say one thing?
Just one.
Yeah, one sentence. I thank you to to Mark, of course, but also to the community for allowing me to serve. I appreciate it. I want to thank my family for allowing me the opportunity to have pride in our community, and certainly to the Galt Community of Character Coalition. There are some folks in this room that can keep secrets pretty well, and when I didn't think they could. So thank you all very much, and Galt is a wonderful place, and it's why I moved here. 12 years ago, when I first became director for the Cosumnes CSD board, it really caught my eye, and one of the reasons why I moved here was for the pride that our community takes. And so I want to thank everybody, and certainly this recognition is really for many other people that sometimes I'm just the conduit for. So thank you to, again, to Mark and the Rotary Club, and Lisa, nice seeing you again. And thanks again, appreciate it.
This next one is for Care and Compassion. This was an award presented actually in March of 2020, but due to the current COVID situation, we weren't able to present it to this woman. This is for Laurel Shamber, who I consider a very dear friend. Laurel Shamber, and this, I nominated Laurel for this. Laurel Shamber is a true model of caring compassion in the Galt community. Laurel works as the Community Outreach and Public Education Officer for the Community Service District, or CSD. Laurel is the person who coordinates the ladder truck for the Galt Extravaganza and works with Galt Police on the community toy drive. What is so impressive about Laurel is her heartfelt dedication to the community and positive outlook no matter the circumstances. In a recent interview, Laurel talked about her outlook on Galt. We are fortunate to live in a community that deeply cares about others. I see consistent evidence that we all truly care about our neighbors and others that live in our community. In a time when there is so much negativity and struggle, there is always a helping hand to be found in Galt. I have seen the evidence of small things that are needed to help a child feel better about being in school and larger needs for when a family loses a home to a fire. In our community, there is always someone to answer the call to help fill the need of someone less fortunate. Laurel spends many weekends and weekdays, especially in December, working on various aspects of the community toy drive, collecting toys, sorting toys, delivering toys for both Elk Grove and Galt. If she hears of a family in need, she rallies people and gets that family taken care of. Laurel is also someone who is never seen without a smile on her face. Laurel also spends many weekends doing educational activities for the kids, again, both in Elk Grove and Galt. In addition, she helps families protect their children by doing car seat checks. She is also the first one to help a friend move on one of her few days off. Laurel is always willing to help anyone in need at any time and always finds the resources to get the job done. Laurel never asks anyone to do something she's not willing to do herself. When help is needed, she invites you in and shows you how great it feels to help others. As Laurel has noted, together we can all make a difference in the lives of family and children. Laurel Shamber is a true asset to the community and an outstanding model of caring and compassion, and I am proud to call Laurel my friend.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
Thank you very much.
Do I need to say anything?
It's up to you.
Oh my gosh, my boss is sitting there going, no, don't let her have an open mic. I'll keep it short and sweet. I love what I do, and I hope it's evident that I truly do have a passion for what I do. And I don't do it for anything other than pure selfless. I do it because it brings me joy when I help somebody else. That's the bottom line. If I can help somebody else, it's my own selfish need. I'm like, I feel so much better. I just helped somebody else. And every year at Christmas, something will drop in my lap that I personally can do to help another kid have, or a family have a better holiday. But I truly enjoy living in Galt and being here and being able to give back to my community. If it weren't for my job, I wouldn't have access to the resources that make it so successful and being able to help all these others. So my job is actually a tool that helps me gives me access to resources and make it a better community. And so I'm just the coordinator. Everybody else is the willing participant. So for that, I am very thankful. And thank you to Gail for being a dear friend and nominating me for this, because this is not the reason why I do it. I just do it because this is what's right. And I truly enjoy being part of this community. And I thank everybody for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurel. Congratulations, Laurel, and congratulations, Rich. Thank you for what you guys do.
Say one more thing. Laurel, I just want to point out for everybody that not only is she doing all these wonderful things through work and through the fire department, but she's also on our Measure R committee. And so in her free time, she gets to spend it doing that. So we thank you for your service to our city beyond that, and as a Measure R committee member.
All right, our next presentation this evening is going to be a cannabis regulation overview from HDL Companies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lorenzo Hines here, City Manager. So our friends from HDL, Ajay Kalori, will be presenting the cannabis regulation overview tonight. On May 3rd, Council directed that there be a conversation brought back for Council discussion regarding cannabis regulations within the city. Tonight's presentation provides an informational overview and sort of a pre-briefing for that discussion. That discussion will take place on the December 20th agenda, but I thought it would be great if we could at least get some information about the industry from a California perspective, and also get some information as to how this would look here in the city of Galt. And luckily, our friends at HDL have expertise in this area, and so they're going to give us this presentation tonight. And I don't know, Ajay, are you on the line? Yes, we can. So, Ajay, we are here at the first slide, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and just let us know next slide, and we'll keep the pattern going for you.
Okay, great. So thank you. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you for having me. Again, my name is Ajay Kaluri, and I work for HDL Companies. I've been asked by city staff to lead a high-level discussion of cannabis policy in California. I've prepared roughly a 20-minute presentation. After the presentation, I'll be able to respond to any questions from the City Council. So let's jump right into slide 2. So first, a little bit of background about my organization. HDL is a consulting firm that works with local government agencies. Our core services include sales tax, property tax, business licensing management. One of our practice areas includes cannabis consulting, where we help cities adopt best practices for regulating the industry. We try our best to stay impartial in this space and meet cities wherever they fall on the cannabis policy spectrum. In some cases, that means helping cities to maintain a ban on cannabis business activity. In other cases, it means helping cities expand legal access to cannabis. It all depends on the needs and preferences of the specific community. Let's go to slide 3. So this slide shows the recent history of cannabis policy in Galt. In 2015 and 2016, the state of California authorized commercial cannabis activity through Proposition 64. Following passage of Proposition 64, Galt adopted a temporary ban on all commercial cannabis activity locally. That ban was extended in 2017 and remains in effect today. The City Council did, however, adopt regulations for at-home personal cultivation of cannabis through Ordinance number 2017-05, which restricted personal cultivation to indoor only up to 6 plants. Since that time, there has been no further action taken by the City Council to expand allowable cannabis activity in Galt. Let's move on to slide 4. This slide shows Proposition 64 election results at the state, county, and local level. As a reminder, Proposition 64 was the statewide ballot initiative that legalized cannabis activity in California. As you can see, there was majority support for cannabis legalization statewide, as well as within Sacramento County. In Galt, voters opposed Proposition 64, but only by a small margin. 52% of local voters opposed Proposition 64, and 48% of voters supported. It's important to note, however, that overall support for cannabis activity has grown nationally since 2016, when Prop 64 was first approved. So these results should really be viewed as historical figures, which most likely have shifted over time. Let's go to slide 5. So when we talk about cannabis activity, it's important to differentiate between the various business types. The cannabis supply chain is highly segmented, and each component can have a different impact on the community. And every community gets to decide for itself whether to allow or ban each individual component. Let's move to slide 6. This chart shows the license types that exist within the cannabis supply chain. It starts with cultivators who grow the plant, manufacturers who convert the plant to other consumable goods, testing labs who verify the quality of the product, distributors who move the product from business to business, and retailers who sell cannabis goods to consumers. I want to emphasize that all the businesses that you see on the left side of this slide, which we call wholesalers, and that includes cultivators, manufacturers, testing labs, and distributors, operate in what we call an oversaturated marketplace. There are far more wholesalers in California today than there are licensed retailers to sell product. So as a result, we expect there would likely be very limited interest in wholesale businesses seeking to open a location in Galt, even if the city were to allow for it. So really, the key decision before the city of Galt is whether to prohibit or allow retail sales locally. Let's move to slide 7. So when considering whether to allow retail, it's important first to separate myth from reality. Very often, we find that community discussions about cannabis activity center around concerns for illegal retail storefronts. In reality, however, licensed retailers look very different than unlicensed businesses. This slide shows the interior of some licensed retail businesses. They look very similar to other retail businesses within the community. The key difference being, of course, that they sell cannabis and that they have to follow very strict state and local regulations, which I'll cover later in this presentation. Slide 8. It's also important to take a step back and look at the state and regional environment for cannabis before making any decisions locally. Let's move to slide 9. So this slide shows the number of licensed cannabis businesses statewide. And as you can see, there are over 12,000 cannabis businesses in California, but less than 10% of those businesses are retailers. So as a result, there is a lot of cannabis product being produced in the state, but very few locations where it can be legally sold. One of the side effects of this is that many consumers still purchase cannabis from the illicit market, despite the existence of licensed businesses in California. Slide 10. This chart really furthers that point. So what you see on this slide is what HDL estimates to be the gap that exists between the number of licensed cannabis retail storefronts and the numbers needed to supply local demand. So counties that you see with a darker shade of blue have a larger gap between legal supply and local demand for cannabis. And as you can see, the county of Sacramento, we estimate to have a shortage of 35 licensed cannabis retailers countywide, which is lower than some of the counties with much larger populations, such as the Bay Area or in Southern California. However, this shortage is notable given the distance that some residents have to travel to access licensed storefront retailers. Let's go to slide 11. So this map shows the locations of all of the licensed cannabis storefront retail businesses in Sacramento County and a portion of San Joaquin County to the south. Each retailer is individually marked using either a blue or yellow pin drop. And as you can see, cannabis storefront retailers are concentrated around the cities of Sacramento and Stockton. Outside of those regions, there is a sizable area where storefront cannabis retail is currently banned, which includes Galt and all of the jurisdictions immediately surrounding the city. Let's go to slide 12. This map shows the cannabis delivery services currently operating within the city. Each blue dot that you see here represents the advertised location of a cannabis delivery vehicle that's marketed on weed maps and available for at-home delivery to residents in Galt. As of earlier this week on the website, there were 2 delivery services advertised as operating in the city. Both are licensed by jurisdictions within Sacramento County. The purpose of this slide is to show that despite there being a ban in place within the city, there still is, in fact, some commercial cannabis activity taking place outside of the local regulatory oversight of the city. Let's move to slide 13. This slide identifies the surrounding jurisdictions that permit cannabis activity for comparison purposes. Most of the cities that permit commercial cannabis activity in the region allow for nearly all license types to operate, including retail, cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and testing. The cities of Lathrop and Manteca are the most restrictive of the group, permitting retail license types only. Let's go to slide 14. This next section of the presentation covers cannabis regulations. So this is intended to show what oversight could look like if the city of Galt decided to lift its local ban on cannabis business activity. Most of the regulations that I cover here today will address storefront retail activity specifically. Let's go to slide 15. From a high level, regulatory programs can establish facility design and location requirements. They can provide the city the authority and control over licensing decisions. The city can impose operating conditions beyond those that are already required by the state. The city can also enhance business accountability for things like security, product safety, and other areas. Let's go to slide 16. So first, regarding location restrictions, as with any other business, cannabis facilities are typically restricted to certain zones within the city. Allowable zones will be defined by the Planning Commission and the City Council. The table that you see on this slide shows commercial and industrial zones that exist within the city. Generally speaking, local jurisdictions typically restrict cannabis activity to commercial and industrial zones only. The map that you see on the right shows all of the zones that exist within the city of Galt. Areas that are shaded in red, pink, purple, and gray represent commercial and industrial zones. These zones primarily exist in the central and northwestern portions of the city. Let's go to slide 17. Cannabis businesses are also required to fall outside of minimum distances of sensitive uses. These sensitive uses, as defined by the state, include schools, commercial daycare centers, and youth centers. And the state mandates that cannabis businesses be located a minimum of 600 feet from these facilities. But cities also have the authority to extend these minimum buffers beyond 600 feet or to recognize additional sensitive uses, such as parks, libraries, or any other facilities. Let's go to slide 18. So common concerns about cannabis businesses are often associated with the categories that you see here on this slide: public safety, public health, neighborhood and land use protection, and preventing youth access. The goal of a well-designed regulatory program is to impose operating restrictions on businesses to mitigate these issues to the greatest extent possible. The next few slides that I'll go through are meant to give you an idea of how that might work in practice. Let's go to slide 19. So for public safety, the state of California, through the Department of Cannabis Control, imposes minimum standards for all cannabis businesses. That includes requiring security personnel on site during all hours of operation, 24-hour video surveillance, third-party alarm monitoring systems, DOJ and FBI criminal background investigations of all owners as well prior to licensure. However, there are additional restrictions that the city could impose. Some best practices that aren't currently required by the state that the city may consider include motion sensor lighting, security patrol when the businesses are closed, and regular inspections of businesses to ensure ongoing compliance with state and local laws. Let's go to slide 20. State public health requirements include third-party testing of cannabis, product labeling and dosing standards, potency limits, daily purchasing limits, and prohibitions on public consumption. Additional standards that the city could adopt include warning signage, restrictions on visibility into the facility from outside, and dedicated funding to support public health programs through cannabis tax revenues. Let's go to slide 21. Regarding land use protections, the state again requires that all cannabis businesses maintain minimum distances from sensitive uses. The state also requires businesses to adopt waste disposal programs, shipping and receiving protocols, and mandatory 10 p.m. closure. The city could strengthen these restrictions by creating additional standards for exterior lighting and landscaping, facility design, and further limitations on hours of operation. So for example, a 9 p.m. closure as opposed to a 10 p.m. closure as required by the state. Slide 22. Finally, and most importantly, preventing youth access is a top regulatory concern. Under state law, licensed retailers are prohibited from selling cannabis to persons under 21. ID verification is required prior to entry. Employees must be present at all times during business hours, and businesses must participate in Metric, which is the state's track and trace system for cannabis goods. The city can further restrict youth access through such actions as an underage decoy program, routine inspections of facilities, and dedicated funding for youth prevention services. In addition, the city could require annual license renewals to ensure that businesses maintain ongoing compliance with state and local laws relating to youth access to cannabis. Let's go to slide 23. Another important factor to consider when deciding whether to allow cannabis businesses is the potential revenue generation for the city. There are three primary ways to generate revenues from cannabis businesses, which are identified on this slide. The first is through administrative fees, which under California law are limited to cost recovery only. The second option is through a business license tax, which is typically charged as a percentage of each business's gross receipts. The third option is through negotiation of an annual fee payment, which can be incorporated into a development agreement, an operational agreement, or a community benefit agreement with each business. Out of all of these options, HDL generally recommends adopting a business license tax as a best method for generating revenues from the industry. However, please be aware that a tax requires voter approval, so that can be a lengthy process. Let's go to slide 24. This slide provides an illustration of potential local tax revenues if you assume 2 storefront retailers in Galt. Please note that this is meant to be an illustration, not a projection. It's based upon industry averages that HDL has observed in the region. Using these averages, we assume gross receipts of $2 million per business per year. Actual gross receipts may be higher, they may be lower. It all depends on the specific operator and local demand. If you assume a 10% business license gross receipts tax, that would translate to $400,000 in annual tax revenues, plus $60,000 in sales and use tax revenues, for a total of $460,000 in annual revenues for the city. If you assume an 8% business license tax, that number falls to $380,000. And if you assume a 6% tax, that number falls to $340,000 annually. Let's go to slide 25. The final set of slides that I want to show you illustrates the standard process for adoption of a cannabis regulatory program. Keep in mind that this process would be contingent upon City Council deciding to move forward. If the City Council decides to maintain a ban on commercial cannabis activity, then most of these steps would not be taken. Step 1, identified on this slide, involves informing City Council and the community of cannabis policies, conducting community engagement, analyzing zoning and land use restrictions, and evaluating potential impacts to neighborhoods. Let's go to slide 26. Step 2, if applicable, involves drafting a regulatory ordinance, developing zoning standards, and conducting planning commission, city council, and community meetings to receive feedback. Next slide. Step 3, which is the final step, involves developing a business license application process, adopting fees to offset the cost to the city of regulating businesses, and presenting voters with a cannabis tax measure for approval. Next slide. So with that, I'd like to thank the City Council for allowing me to present, and I'll turn it back over to City staff for discussion.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that is a informational overview of the cannabis industry, cannabis trends, cannabis legislation, voting history, what an industry would look like. It's just the cursory level here in Galt. And Ajay is available for any questions that you may have. And just wanted to remind, particularly everyone in the audience, that this will be a series of discussions. So tonight is just the introduction to make sure that we're all sort of drawing from the same factual pool. And then council will begin, at least we're scheduled to begin discussions on the 20th. But council members, we've got an expert on the line, and feel free to ask questions. If you have any information or request of me, I'll be taking notes of anything that you're requiring as well.
I have a question. Hi, Jay. This is Jay. I'm curious, has any business ever offered a voluntary tax instead of having it go to the vote, and is it legal?
That's a great question. So some cities choose to adopt a program prior to presenting their residents with a tax measure, but they still want the ability to generate revenues from the businesses. And the way that those cities have done that is by mandating that cannabis businesses, in order to receive a license, enter into a development agreement or an operating agreement, and through that agreement, which is really just a contract with the city, pay an annual fee that is mutually agreeable, mutually negotiated. But part of the selection process is based off of what those businesses offer to the city through the fee. And often those fees are structured similar to a tax. They're calculated as a percentage of that business's gross receipts. The legality of that, I'd have to refer to an attorney. I'm not an attorney. Some attorneys are uncomfortable with that contractual arrangement because it looks like a tax, it smells like a tax, so is it a tax? Other cities are comfortable with that type of arrangement, but frequently use it as a way to transition to a tax. So it's really a way to allow the businesses to operate, pay a fair share of revenues into the city while voters are being presented with a tax measure. So it's not recommended. I think a tax measure is the best option, but some cities choose to use it as a transitional way to allow the industry to operate.
Mr. Splendario, do you have an opinion on that?
I do have an opinion. I agree with AJ that I'll just say it could be fraught with some issues. I don't really feel comfortable at liberty going into, I guess, my legal analysis on it, just for the benefit of maintaining some kind of, I guess, legal protections on it. But I will say there are some concerns that I have from a legal perspective on the development agreement arrangement that a lot of cities have gone to. And there's been some recent case law that I think further, recent in the last 6 months, that further puts that at vulnerability. So I think probably the best path forward legally would be to have the voters pass a business license tax. In my experience, those have passed even in communities that weren't fond of cannabis in general, just because it would be a tax on the businesses themselves, not on the general voters. But there are some problems with the development agreement arrangement from a legal perspective.
So technically it's legal, but very gray.
I would say, I'll just say yes. Yes.
Okay. Jay, do you have any statistics on rise or decline in crime in cities like Galt that choose to allow cannabis sales?
Another great question. That one's probably even more difficult to answer. I will say that I'm not an academic in this space, but I am familiar with research in that area, and you will find studies that have a range of findings. So some will say crime had zero impact with the opening of cannabis businesses. Some will argue that crime increased. You actually have some studies that show that crime decreased just because of the presence of the business. They may be moving into a vacant property. They have security. They have cameras on site. So I would not consider that to be a settled question at this point, just because of the inconsistency in the papers that I've read.
Thank you. That's all I have for right now.
AJ, I appreciate your presentation and the thoroughness of it. You've probably done this a few times, I suspect. I have a couple of questions. This is Councilmember Lozano. Can you talk a little bit more? You kind of glossed over the slide 8, which talks about local environment. And my question about that is local environment related to the is it local environment related to the constituency's desire for this type of storefront, or is it local environment related to geography and those types of things?
It was intended more as the regional environment. So, what does it look like statewide? And then zoning in on Sacramento County in particular. I'm not really in a position to say much about local preference or the specific needs of Galt.
Sure.
So I was merely just presenting licensing data for the surrounding region.
Okay. And then on slide 9, you reference the licenses as of the second quarter of this year. And in this box is retailers and retailers non-storefront. I'm going to make an assumption that the non-storefront are 366.
That's right.
And those are delivery?
That's right. Those are delivery-only businesses. They're not open to the public, but they can deliver to people's residences.
Okay. And so of the 849, how many of those have dual licenses?
For both retail and delivery?
Correct.
Most jurisdictions allow their storefront retailers to deliver by choice. I don't have statistics on how many of them actually do. Many of them choose not to, just because it's not nearly as profitable as storefront activity.
Okay. All right. And then another question I had was related to the retail market being short 35 in Sacramento County. How is that data, what data is used to determine that?
So that is based off of a number of assumptions, but they're grounded in studies that have looked at this that show that anywhere between 10% to 20% of a population are regular cannabis consumers. Some studies show at the higher end of the range, others show at the lower end of the range. Then we look at the number of retail businesses that would be needed to supply that demand based off of the typical number of customers that a retailer could support. And so we look at the total population of a community, use general projections for how many of those are consumers, and then we look at industry trends for how many consumers a typical retailer can support. And that's generally the methodology that we use to come up with that projection. It does not factor in a lot of other variables, such as neighboring jurisdictions. So, for example, in Galt, I would argue that if you had retailers open locally, you'd get some capture from surrounding cities because there aren't any other retailers nearby outside of Stockton and Sacramento. It doesn't take into consideration travel and tourism and a lot of other factors. So it's a back of the envelope calculation, but we found it to be really helpful in just looking regionally statewide at where the businesses are, where they aren't, where demand is, and where we think there's an unmet demand.
Okay, I have a couple of more questions, but I'll pass on them for now and allow my colleagues to continue. Thank you.
Sure.
Jay, this is Mayor Farmer. I have a few questions. I did also have a question related to what Councilman Vandenberg asked. So maybe if that's not something you can have tonight, maybe as this conversation proceeds in the future, I would like to see data regarding crime before and after cities that went from not having cannabis, retail cannabis, to then having retail cannabis. I know that they can be objective, I guess, that data, but and primarily data showing cannabis-related crimes like arrests for marijuana. What I'm looking for is a correlation of any decrease at all in the arrests for regarding illegal cannabis if there is a legal sales presence in that community. So if there's any data that could be presented to this council in the future, that would be great. A question I have for you, Jay, is you talked about the different taxes. It seems like there's a broad range, and I mean, I guess a city could try to levy whatever they want, but is there a percentage tax that seems to be the most popular? Because I know that I've heard people say, well, we live in a town where, retail cannabis is available, but the tax is so high that people tend to still buy it from the illegal market. So is there like a sweet spot that you found with other jurisdictions, Jay?
Yeah, that's a good question. We recommend somewhere between 4 to 6% gross receipts tax on retail. There are some cities, primarily early adopters, that had higher tax rates, up to 10%. But you're right that the tax has to be viewed not just in comparison to other cities, but also in terms of the impact it has in either attracting customers to the legal market or pushing them into the illicit market. But taxes aren't the only variable in that. There's a lot of regulatory costs that the licensed businesses have to meet, a lot of other costs that drive up the cost of legal cannabis relative to illegal. So even if you charged a 0% tax, you'd still have the issue of consumers choosing to purchase from the illicit market just because of the price difference. So it's a variable, but broadly speaking, we recommend somewhere within that range of 4 to 6%.
Okay, thank you. And this question would be maybe towards Mr. Splendario related to tax. You mentioned about, to Councilman Vandenberg's question about, could you just come out with a tax and not have to go through the whole voter approval of such a tax? So assuming that the proper way to ever have something done, if something was to be done, would I be assuming that we would basically, something like this would have to wait until 2024, the next election cycle, to have something like that go to the voters, or does that require some kind of high cost with a special election of some sorts?
Likely as a general tax, I believe would have to wait until the next general election. Special taxes, you have a little more flexibility. Maybe you could consolidate with the primary elections either in March or June. But likely this would be a general tax, and so it would be out there a couple years.
Okay. And my last question, and I'll let move on to my other fellow council members to see if they have questions, would be for you, Jay. How your graph there shows, shows a scenario assuming 2 storefront retailers. Well, I would guess that if the city of Galt were to consider allowing retail cannabis, that there's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to want to come open. How do other cities determine who gets to do it? Is it like a lottery system? I mean, who gets to determine who are the first 2 in and the only 2?
So that's at the city's discretion. There are various methods that have been used throughout the state, and pros and cons to every method. Some have chosen to use a first come, first serve, which is probably the most problematic, just because now you've created a race for who can get their application in first. Some cities choose to use a merit-based approach where they score and rank the applicants. That can be challenging as well, because at this point there are a lot of very talented businesses that engage in this activity, and choosing between them can be a challenge. Other cities use a lottery. Usually it's first a quality assurance review to ensure that only the most qualified applicants make it into the lottery. But to avoid challenges to the process, they later then choose to use a lottery for final selection. And that's less subject to risk or legal challenge, because it's hard to challenge a lottery process. So generally, those are the options that are available. Then you can use a hybrid of any of those different methods.
Jay, if I
Sure,
could,
yeah.
this is Lorenzo. If I could piggyback, my former city used a lottery system, and the system that Ajay just described, that there had to be sort of a standards review first, and then only those folks that passed through got through the lottery. That city currently has, I believe, 6 retail outlets.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Jay. I'm going to go ahead and allow my other council members to ask questions, and I'll circle back on mine.
Jay, this is Paul Sandu. And Jay, this is Paul. And my question is, I know, thank you for your presentation. You gave us some presentation. We have some increased some revenue. My question is, what kind of negative impact to our community? And that's a small city. Surrounding this city, there is 2 cities, Elk Grove, Lodi, and also Sacramento County. They does not allow. And what is your opinion? It can be negative impact to our community. Jay, did you hear it?
Yeah, I heard the question. That's a difficult question to answer. It's a very complicated policy area with public health impacts, concerns about public consumption, mental health, and other issues. And whether or not cannabis businesses, licensed cannabis businesses, have a positive impact on the whole or a negative impact on the whole, it's very difficult to say. I think that the one thing I would point out is that cannabis consumption is already occurring across the states in jurisdictions that allow licensed activity and jurisdictions that prohibit it, and in which case consumers will be purchasing from the illicit market and consuming from the illicit market. The studies that I've looked at have generally found that consumption doesn't really change whether you allow licensed businesses or you prohibit them, in which case consumers will just purchase it from the illicit market like they always have. So if consumption doesn't really change, I guess that ultimately leads to the question of what sort of impact do licensed businesses have as opposed to consumers just purchasing from the illicit market. Licensed businesses are regulated. They have stringent state requirements. They have track and trace requirements. They have to test all of their product. So it's a more quality product that consumers can rely more upon. But some of the larger questions of overall consumption, driving under the influence, youth access, those are really challenging questions that I'm not in the best position to answer.
All right, thank you. The other, my question is on slide number 12.
Mm-hmm.
And what that red dot mean that?
Well, there's two blue dots on slide 12. If you go to a website called Weed Maps, which is basically an advertising website like Yelp or Google or any other online platform, you can search, you can do a map-based search for communities to see where there are licensed delivery businesses advertising in that community as available for delivery. And as of the date that we viewed, and I went to the website again this morning to confirm, there were 2 businesses that were advertising as available for delivery within the community.
So you telling me that blue dot or the red dot?
The blue dots, those aren't actual locations, they're approximate locations. Normally the way the website works is they have dots or vehicles, pictures of vehicles for generally where the delivery driver is located. And the idea being that if you placed an order, that delivery vehicle, wherever it's located, whether it's actually at that location or somewhere nearby, would be available to deliver cannabis to your house.
So that's mean that location on 99 and Twin City Road, that's on the Google. You said that sometimes the people on the Google, they don't get the authorization from the property owner.
It's not actually operating at the property there. It's meant to communicate where the vehicle is. So it could be moving, it could be stationary, but it's not based on a facility that's selling cannabis. It's a delivery driver that's willing to deliver.
So
anywhere.
I'm talking about how you get that information.
It's based on an online platform that the business itself identifies its location. So a consumer or anyone else can go on the website and get that information.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. It's Kevin Papineau. A little follow-on to Vice Mayor's question there regarding delivery. That's regulated statewide. Is there any radius where a certain delivery business is allowed to go to, or can they just, deliver anywhere in the state?
That's a great question. So I don't believe there's a radius requirement for delivery vehicles. There are, however, requirements for the amount of product that they can carry. All deliveries have to originate from the licensed facility. So if you have a licensed storefront, for example, in Stockton, to the start that day, the delivery vehicle has to originate from that location. They all have to be GIS location tracked, GPS, sorry. So there are various regulations that ultimately determine how far those vehicles can travel. So they are regional, but they can go across jurisdiction boundaries. And it's probably up to each business to determine how far it works for them to travel.
Do they have some specific security requirements or something? Because to me, this map just looks like I can look for I know there's a car there that I can rob that's full of marijuana.
Usually they're not advertising their exact location, so I
Right.
doubt you'd be able to find the actual vehicle or know which one it is. There are security requirements, how much product they can hold, how the product has to be secured, the path of travel for the businesses. There are quite a few. Those are just a few to name offhand that the state requires for cannabis delivery services.
Okay. Yeah, and it just, it seems like having that delivery stuff in the community is kind of ripe for somebody to place a dummy order and, like they used to rob the pizza guy, now they can rob the cannabis guy. So So that is a kind of a concern I hadn't thought about having those guys rolling around the community. And then I don't remember which slide it is, but the left side of it had all the wholesalers on it. And thinking about the, I guess, quality control, or what kind of stuff retailers are selling, can you give a little bit of information on what regulation? I assume it's the state that would regulate all those wholesalers. What kind of regulation is on that as far as quality control or the array of products that are available?
Sure. So all cannabis from legal businesses are required to pass through multiple channels. So if you go through the chart that I provided, it starts with the cultivator, can go to a manufacturer, although not all goods are manufactured. Sometimes it's just the flower from the cultivator itself. But they have to pass through a distributor, which is responsible for quality control, verifying packaging, labeling, other requirements. But probably most importantly, all cannabis has to be sampled and tested at a third-party testing lab. And testing labs check for potency, pesticides, contaminants, heavy metals, a number of other requirements to verify that the cannabis goods meet state testing requirements. If they fail, then the entire batch has to be destroyed. If it's passed, then it can move on to a retailer. So that's the way that the state has designed the product flow. And to enforce that, they have what's called the metric track and trace system. So all cannabis goods from the point it's planted in the ground through the entire supply chain is tracked and managed through the state's track and trace system until it's ultimately sold to consumers.
Okay. Is that overseen by Consumer Affairs, or is there a separate agency?
A separate agency is called the Department of Cannabis Control, but I think it is under the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Thanks. Thank you. And just one final question. As far as the land use regulations and where they'd be allowed, there's a lot of regulations listed as to where they can't be. And I don't know, maybe Frank can kind of address this too. But it seems to me that you don't want it near a sensitive area, but you also don't want it totally out of sight. So is it possible for a jurisdiction to specify a certain geographical area where it could be allowed rather than just trying to go around and pick out areas where it can't be?
That's correct. We have seen that. So some cities focus strictly on where they can't go and define buffers and zoning requirements. And later they may find that they've literally buffered out the entire community. So it's a balance that you have to strike. But other cities choose to adopt overlay zones. So they do recognize buffers, they do recognize zones, but there are certain areas where they want the cannabis businesses or would prefer that they locate. And if that's the case, you could adopt an overlay zone for that area and even disregard, in a few instances, nearby buffers if you think that that area is appropriate for a cannabis business.
Okay, thank you.
Jay, this is Mayor Farmer again. I just wanted to share a thought. You were talking a minute ago how you were talking about sharing data that showed that consumption usually did not change in cities that brought on retail cannabis. Did I hear that correctly? Is that a statistic that you said?
That's correct. But again, in this space, there are conflicting studies, right? But generally, that's the impression that I've gotten from those.
Yeah, I know all data. I mean, data can be different from depending on who's taking it. I get that. I just thought it was interesting because we were asking questions about decreasing in crime and illegal sales. But I guess if you had 1,000 transactions or 1,000 usages taking place in a city, and now that city then had retail cannabis, and there's still only 1,000 usages, that you would have to assume that some of those now users are now using it from a legal source and a legal source just based on what you just shared. I mean, one would think.
That's right. A lot of sales for licensed businesses as they open is merely a transition from purchases from the illicit market to purchases at a licensed business.
Okay, thanks. So I know, I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions we're going to ask, and again, council has obviously can ask any questions. We can continue, but I think I want to ask if there's any public comment. Well, what I want to say to the public before we go to public comment on this item is that, again, like the city manager stated, this is simply just a kickoff discussion about this. We don't know. It'll be ultimately up to the city council this evening to decide what direction we go, if we're going to want to have another discussion, make this an agenda item for further outreach, or what, I don't know, because we haven't got to that point this evening. But I just want to let you know we are not making any decisions of any importance tonight. This is just simply us bringing this to the city council for a discussion. So is there any public comment?
Ken Lee.
Mr. Lee?
Good evening, City Council. My name is Ken Lee. I just wanted to bring up, as a previous tobacco store owner and distributor, insights as being an owner. I'm neutral on the marijuana thing. I'm here to learn what's going on. But as a previous owner of a tobacco store in San Francisco, it stays with responsible owners. It's the irresponsible owners who give a bad light to the industry. So but having limitations on the amount of stores that you have, it builds peer pressures among those who are in business, and they self-regulate each other. And if there's no supply, if there's no demand, there's no supply, and basically there's no established businesses for it. That's the way business has always been done, if the supply and demand, if businesses stay in business. And I battled big tobacco companies that were bootlegging their own cigarettes and their own brands, selling illegal cigarettes in America. And I brought them down, and they did that to make unfair price gouging to the legitimate dealers. So having statewide regulation, it will overlook the manufacturers and distributors from doing things like that too. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you for your input, Mr. Lee. Any other public comment?
Scott Robinson.
Good evening, City Council and staff. My name is Scott Robinson, and I'm the owner of Galt Cannabis Company. We're not operating yet, but we hope to at some point. Thank you for allowing me to make this comment, and thank you to HDL and the other presenters. There was a lot of information about the city's regulatory options and what they could expect financially if they did allow commercial cannabis to operate here in Galt. I think it's important to also discuss the people that are using cannabis and how they benefit from it. CBS reported that the fastest growing demographic reporting cannabis use in the United States is seniors 55 and older. In a survey of Medicare recipients, 21% of respondents reported that they were current users of cannabis for medical purposes. Survey respondents were most likely to report using cannabis products to address symptoms of anxiety, chronic pain, depression, glaucoma, and as a sleep aid. It's important to allow safe and convenient access of cannabis to our seniors and to our veterans. Most visitors to cannabis dispensaries are buying products to improve the quality of their day-to-day lives. These products are things like cannabis edibles, tinctures, and topical creams that have specific dosage increments and recommendations. Many products are not even intoxicating if used at the recommended doses. With the opioid and fentanyl epidemic and the dangers of the illicit market products, it is now more important than ever for people to purchase their cannabis products from a licensed cannabis retailer. These products have been lab tested down to the parts per billion to be deemed free of molds, pesticides, and other harmful compounds that the illicit products may carry. Please consider amending the current ordinance to allow commercial cannabis retailers in the city of Galt. Thank you for allowing me to share this information. I hope you have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Do you have any further comment?
No more public comment.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. One more online.
Okay.
Mr. Davidson?
Mr. Davidson,
Yes,
go,
can you
go ahead.
hear me?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Good evening, council members and city staff. My name is Greg Davidson. I am a 63-year-old male veteran and a former business owner here in Galt and a nearly 35-year resident of Galt. I am confined to a wheelchair following a motor vehicle accident in November of 1984. I use medical cannabis to help alleviate the spasms associated with my disability. I'd like to urge the council and the community itself to urgently begin the process of revisiting the city ordinance regarding allowing a retail cannabis dispensary in Galt. It's a huge burden on patients such as myself to have to drive to Sacramento to obtain our medication or to use a delivery service where prices are on average 20% higher than a brick and mortar dispensary. And many of us are unable to make the drive to Sacramento or Stockton for health reasons or transportation issues. And all of that driving must be done on Highway 99 or I-5, and council well knows the inherent dangers of that, as it seems that everyone is in such a hurry these days. I've visited many different dispensaries in Sacramento, and all are set up so that your California ID must be scanned before you're allowed into the dispensing room. All also have armed security on duty. I feel safer in a dispensary than I do in a bank. My personal experience also supports the data presented by HDL earlier, as there are always more customers than salespeople. The regulated market provides a tested product, whereas the illicit market does not. This is an important issue to medical users such as myself. Councilman Papineau raised concerns about vehicles full of cannabis rolling through the city, ripe to be robbed like the old pizza delivery robberies. To protect against this, every order in that vehicle has also been verified in the same method as the dispensary by getting your California ID on record. I wanted to make that point on the fly as his concerns came up after my prepared remarks. Please consider a safe and clean cannabis dispensary to operate here in the city of Galt. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Do you have any further comment?
No more public comment.
Council, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a couple of more questions that weren't touched on. Many of them were. I have a question about the process. So, Ajay, you spoke to a three-step process near the end of your presentation. What is the timeline in totality for that process?
Setting aside the tax measure, which would be on its own timeline to align with elections, I would say that the ordinance development process could take 3 months is I think a reasonable time frame, possibly longer. The application process can take a considerable time, particularly if you choose to use a merit-based process. So thinking through the evaluation criteria, how it will be reviewed, how it will be scored, who will do that, that can take a lot of time. It could shorten if you choose to use a lottery instead, because I think it's a more straightforward process. So the application process itself, I would estimate maybe 6 months is a reasonable time frame. But then after even businesses are selected through that process, they have to complete build out. If it's new construction, it could take longer. If it's just repurposing of an existing structure, it could take less. So anywhere from 6 months to a year. You probably would not see any businesses open for at least a year after adoption and approval of a regulatory ordinance.
Okay. And then my other question has to do with it really is on slide 18 about public safety, public health, neighborhood and land use protection, and preventing youth access, kind of all the points of community priorities. I've done a little research, including visiting a dispensary and talking to people in the community and such. One of the things that I'd like to further investigate if we can. And Jay, I don't know that you're the right person to do it, although you may be, is, as was mentioned earlier, some of the public safety impacts, like the rates of DUIs in our city from the time 2016, actually probably 2017 on, to see if there's any difference. Because what I'm hearing is we have a lot of new users of cannabis in our city, and it's based on, I don't know if it's data, but certainly folks in the community are concerned that there are new users now, that there are legal ways to access it. And so
Drunk driving has nothing to do with that.
I agree. And then certainly the public health and neighborhood and land use protection are kind of, in my mind, at least the neighborhood and land use protection are kind of self-explanatory, but and certainly preventing youth access. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had other substances in our communities for years and years and years, and access to teen or youth access has always been an issue. But I'd certainly like to hear, at least in maybe a later meeting, when our local officials can have the data about arrests, and not only arrests, but certainly calls for service related to that. And then if we could access our county public health, I know they did a presentation at the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors about 3 or 4 months ago related to the public health piece of it. And just so that we get the full picture. And I would encourage anyone that has an interest to certainly visit a dispensary that you're comfortable with. I was a little, not surprised, but I certainly had a different opinion leaving there in terms of what they were, what is a dispensary and how do they operate, and certainly it was definitely eye-opening. The other piece of this, at least from a policy perspective in my mind, and I say these things just to kind of tee up my questions for our next meeting, is there's a couple of reasons why, policy reasons why you would change the policy related to cannabis, and one is certainly financial, which I hear a lot about. That's a lot of money that could come into the city. And then the other piece is what value would it bring to our citizens in our community? And how many citizens in our community would find value in that? There was data given to, I don't know if it was the entire council, I suspect it was, but over a year ago, where postcards were signed at a local community event, and there were quite a few people. Many of them were not residents necessarily of the city, or even couldn't verify necessarily if they were residents of our community, but there were quite a few. The other question I had real quick is, we did a scientific survey about a year ago, testing a variety of things, and one was the possibility, and I don't even know how it was phrased because I didn't get the questionnaire, but the possibility of a cannabis retail establishment here. And in the presentation, it was like 52% to 48% in 2016, sorry, when Prop 64 passed, was what our community or city residents voted. What was based on our survey just about a year ago, what were those numbers like, and did they compare, or was it increased?
Council member, it was essentially 50-50, for and against.
Okay. So in the presentation, 48% of the voters supported Prop 64 and 50. So it's about the same. So we haven't really moved a lot in
Yeah.
In 6 years. Okay. That's all I have, and I'd be happy offline at some point if the chief or fire service or anybody has questions about this public safety piece of this and kind of what we want to bring to the community in terms of a presentation. I'd be available for that. So thank you.
So I just have one real quick question, and I'm not going to have any more questions this evening on this. Just real quick, if my understanding would be of Jay's talk about the process and the time frame, and then the question I asked you earlier about when a voter initiative regarding a tax would have to take place. So my understanding is correctly where the process, if it were to move forward, could move forward without that tax and be online and have a business operating in, say, a year and a half from now, and then whenever we were able to do the ballot thing, that would be the tax. So is that fair to say that it doesn't have to happen simultaneously?
Yeah, sorry, the mayor was looking at me, so I thought.
Sorry, whoever.
Go answer AJ, and then I'll supplement if I need to.
Yeah, that's your choice to make. Some cities choose to move forward with the tax measure first, and they sometimes even use it as a way to gauge community interest. So if voters support the tax measure, it could be interpreted as sort of a green light to continue pursuing a regulatory program. Other cities will adopt a regulatory program and later approve the tax. The goal would be to time it so that by the time the business is open, there is a tax in place, but even if there isn't, it could be layered on after they open. So all options are available to you in terms of how you want to time it.
Okay, thanks. So I just want to finish with the last little comment is, what I would like to see moving forward is, well, there was a mention about money a minute ago, and what I can say is my personal feeling, and I think I probably could speak for most of us, is I don't think any of us council members are going to make a decision on this ultimately regarding money, because this is not just about money. I would never want to consider something like this based on how much money it can generate. This has to really be a value to the community, like Councilman Lozano mentioned again. And to determine that value to the community is the big question. What is the value to the community? Does the community of Galt feel like this is a value or does it not? What I would like to suggest moving forward is that we bring this back as an agenda item. Staff can tell us what sort of outreach we could do, how that outreach could be accomplished, whether it's through online survey, whatever means, to start gauging the feelings of the people of Galt. Continue the discussion, allow more time for people to come to a council meeting, to reach out to each of their council members individually and let us know how they feel. I would like to hear from each and every one of the people who have an opinion on this. I want to hear people, if you are adamantly against something like this in the town, I want to hear from you. And I want to give those people ample time to hear from you. If you very much support something like this, I want to hear from you as well. And I want to make sure that your voices are all heard. I would like to see I would like to basically do some sort of outreach that leaves no stone unturned. Online, maybe a mailer that has a link where you can log in, even a town hall forum in the Littleton Center with 500 chairs in there, and invite the community and raise your hand and speak. Just anything and everything to give all ample opportunity for people to speak on this topic. And then as we go through that process, I'm sure we'll all have more questions, but that's just what I'm throwing out there right now to see if the council would support moving the ball forward on just to do that next. So that's it from me on this subject, I think.
I would, and I'd add to it, Councilmember Lozano said that, if you haven't, you should go visit a dispensary and, see it with your own eyes. And some people just, won't do that or can't do that. So if we could include in that, I don't know, some sort of a virtual tour to give people really an idea of what those businesses operate like as part of that, just as an education, so people can make an educated decision.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one last comment. Yeah, I think education is very important because I did a lot of research on this. I talked to officers that work in Antioch and other cities. I talked to religious people, and I was quite surprised the answers I got. It's it's very split, and I think mostly people are not educated. A fair group of people have the 1970s viewpoint, and I don't think they're up to date, whether they would still vote for it or not, but certainly a requirement, if we're going to venture into this. Thank you.
My thoughts are with my constituents. We need to be outreach, and if we're going to do some kind of survey, that survey should be very transparent. That survey should be tell what we bringing, what can be impact, or whatever positive or negative we need to evaluate. We also need to hear from the expert, both side of the expert. This is too early to make me a decision. There's need a lot of review, not a research on that. Thank you.
Mr. Lozano? So would you consider that a consensus of coming back to us at a future date here soon with some of how we could move that forward and see?
Well, yes, I understand the direction. Would you give us until the last meeting in January to formulate a plan?
Absolutely.
Because I know we had mentioned December 20th, and that's, given the task at hand, I'd like a little more time to think it through.
Yeah, and maybe take some of the questions that have been asked, and obviously we'll probably have a lot more, and hopefully we'll have a lot of citizens asking questions, but that gives us a chance to really ramp up interest for the January meeting too, I think.
Okay.
So I do think it's fine that it's interesting we're talking about tonight, being that yesterday was the anniversary of the repeal of the 21st Amendment regarding prohibition. So I don't know. Anyways, so no further public comment, Tina, on this?
No public comment.
All right, then we are going to move on to our next presentation, which is fentanyl awareness.
So apparently our speaker is not available this evening. And but the genesis or the gist of the presentation was to inform the public of sort of the many channels that fentanyl is slipping into our sort of everyday existence, and to just be aware of it. One of the trends that we're seeing nowadays is fentanyl-laced marijuana. And so that's why I thought it was appropriate to mention or to have a speaker here tonight. I'd like to thank Councilmember Papanow for bringing this issue to our attention so we could get it out and make sure the public is aware of it. I will reschedule that speaker for another time, and we'll get that information to everyone.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move on to item K, which will be public comment. Tina?
Under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the public may address the City Council on non-agenda items. The public comment section is for the City Council to receive comments. Except for brief responses to questions, no discussion or action may be taken on any item that is not listed on the agenda. Please limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Due to the statewide emergency, public comments may also be submitted as noted above via the options listed on the first page of the agenda for providing live public comment or prior to the meeting via email to pubcom@cityofgalt.org by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting, which will be distributed to City Council, made part of the official minutes, and posted on the city's website prior to the meeting, but will not be read out loud.
All right, do we have any public comment?
Ken Lee.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ken Lee. I just want to bring up awareness of the 4th Street Promenade. There was trimming and landscaping on the bulb out on the whole promenade, and they cleaned out the interior behind the shrubs of all the garbage and the leaves, and they raked up all the debris and trimmings. And it sets a bar to the private landscapers, showing what the city does, cleaning up the mess instead of blowing it all over neighbors' places into the streets. And the only other part that I brought up, they didn't continue the trimming on C Street. All the bulb outs on C Street still need trimming. for public safety so they can see us when we try to cross the street. And I think I'd like to bring up that December was Public Safety Month for pedestrians and safety. There's still a need for the increasing pedestrian crossings. We're still having problems crossing the street. Most of my neighbors on Galt Place complain about it. We need more sign postings and senior venues, senior venues like Senior Center and Galt Place. We need pavement printing that it's a senior crossing, and we need decoys to catch and ticket the ones that don't want to stop for the pedestrians out into the street and they still won't stop. When I use my walker, they don't care. They'll try to run my walker over. And there's still a need for benches on the 4th Street Promenade between C and E Street, because when we walk our dogs and everything for the senior center, there's no place to sit. You have to go all the way down to C Street or all the way down to F Street. And that's all I have to bring up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lee. Appreciate it. Any additional public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll move on to item L, reports by city council members on regional boards, commissions, and committees. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Nothing to report.
All right, Mr. Papineau.
So, brief follow-up to last meeting's report on our CAST meeting. One of the things we decided and both school districts were interested in doing was the fentanyl awareness. And I was directed to contact the district attorney's office to find out who they have to present on it. And that kind of went in a circle because they referred me to Arrive Alive California. And turns out they already do the, I believe it's called Real DUI Court at both high schools. On the, whichever one doesn't have every 15 minutes, they get that. So they have a good working relationship with both high schools already. And they have a very robust fentanyl awareness program. So both school districts will be working with them to hopefully not too far into the new year follow through and get those presentations for the schools and for the community and parents and stuff. So that's just a follow-up to that. And then December 1st, the Metro Cable Commission met, and I was able to attend in person. And beginning with our meeting, I believe it's in January, we no longer have a remote option. We will be meeting fully in person. And we conducted a lot of regular business, but also had a couple of special events, proclamations, honoring Bob Davison, the outgoing director, and Don Natoli, who's been on the commission for decades. So it was a very nice event to send them off. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And thanks for bringing that info to the cast. I saw that email. So, Mr. Vandenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I was at the Consumers Groundwater Authority meeting. Basically, we're close to finalizing our application for grant process. There's certainly not enough money there to start putting water in the ground the way I would like, but you can only ask for what is there. That was the totality of the meeting, really. Also, I went to the South Sacramento Conservation Agency. It wasn't too eventful other than they agreed to rent a new office in a new location. That's all.
Mr. Lozano, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I attended the special SACOG board meeting on December 1st, and it was the last meeting of the year. Next year, the board meetings will be in person, and the committee meetings will be virtual, so that'll be kind of nice to do both. Going down to downtown Sacramento is, depending on the day and the weather, can be kind of a challenge. So at our meeting, we were given a 2022 highlights. presentation. And there's a lot going on. It's online if you have a chance and want to read about it. It's there, but it talks about a lot about the strategic plan and active transportation funding, Green Means Go, all of those programs that we've been working on the last few years. We also had the opportunity to honor 4 outgoing council or directors from the SACOG board who are retiring. We had a council member from Winters, one from Davis, a Yolo County supervisor, and Auburn City Council member that are retiring. And so, and then also, if I didn't mention before, Patrick Kennedy, who's a supervisor in Sacramento County, is going to be the chair for next year of the board, and Michael Saragosa from Placerville City Council is going to be the vice chair. So look forward to new people on the board next year, and moving forward and trying to get some more funding for our city here and for our community. So, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir. Myself, I attended the Galt Youth Commission meeting last night. We just had some regular order of business. City manager came and gave an update to the commissioners on some things going on in the city. We did actually talk to them about the upcoming cannabis discussion, and we encouraged the youth commission to be involved in that discussion and do their own research and actually make an agenda item for the youth to discuss. And so we'd like to get their perspective on that too. So, but again, it was pretty much business as usual on that, so nothing spectacular to report. So with that, we'll move on to the information consent calendar. It is recommended that items 1 through 9 be acted upon simultaneously unless a separate discussion and or action is requested by a council member. Do I have anything from council?
I would like to make a comment on the minutes.
Yes.
A couple changes need to be made. If I have your approval to change them, on November 1st, the meeting started at 4:30 p.m., so the minutes need to say Sandu entered the meeting at 4:31 p.m., not 4:01. And on November 15th, adjourned to closed session needs to state the item was moved to tonight's meeting, December 6th, and to delete the reconvene to open session.
Okay. So do we need to vote on that separately?
I'll allow it in the interest of moving this on.
Okay.
But normally, yeah, that should be a standalone item.
Okay. All right. I actually, just to speed things along too, I just had 2 really quick questions about items M5 and M6, very brief, that Mike Selling would probably need to answer. So maybe if Mr. City Manager, if you could ask him to step in as we go through the rest of the consent calendar, and then I can ask him real fast. Thank you. So I'll be pulling item M5 and 6. So with that, I'll be looking for a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, and 9. And those items are receive and file warrants for periods ending November 22 of 2022. Item 2 is going to be the minutes of the regular meeting with the changes as so noted by the city clerk for November 1st, 2022 and November the 15th, 2022. Item 3 is going to be the cancellation of the January 3rd, 2023 city council meeting. Item 4 is to adopt an ordinance adding sections 18.16080, sections 1532.030, 1808.030, 040.050, and tables 1828-1 and 1848-2, and repealing section 1844-150 of the Galt Municipal Code regarding the accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and the junior accessory dwelling units, JADUs, exempt from CEQA under California Public Resources Code section 21080.17. And item 7, Proposition 68, program per capita grant funds, exempt from CEQA under section 15301. Item 8 is going to be the authorization of the city manager to enter in an agreement with Sacramento County to receive ARPA monies in the amount of $450,000 and appropriate those funds to replace 5 playground structures, CEQA exempt under 15302, replacement and or reconstruction. And item 9, receive and file Senate Bill 165, Special Tax Accountability Report for Community Facilities District 2005-1. Do I have a motion to approve those 7 items?
Move.
Moved by Vice Mayor Sandu.
Second.
Seconded by seconded by Councilman Vanderburg. Can I have a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Sandu?
Aye.
Councilmember Papineau?
Aye.
Councilmember Vandenberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Lozano.
Aye.
Mayor Farmer.
Aye. Items approved 5-0. Mr. Selling, I just had two quick questions, and I do apologize that I didn't give these in advance. I read this section of the agenda late today. Just really quick. First was regarding the item 5. It's the task order change. My question was, I just read a lot of verbiage in there about them doing stuff regarding traffic analysis at that intersection and things that are required prior to the development moving forward, just to kind of layman's terms. My question is, with a project that just finished on the other side, or when we get in scenarios where we just finish a project and then there's another project on the opposite corner, isn't there some of those services or some of those reports that can be reused because we just did an analysis of that very area?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. Yes, for the townhomes project here, they can take the information from the Veranda and the Parlin Oaks, is it? I forget. Information as far as the traffic generation and easily roll that into their analysis. So, yes.
Okay. And then on the other item, M6, which is the 5-year lease agreement with S&L Wholesale for the warehouse space at 140 Enterprise. I just a question. So is this the last? So refresh me because maybe I don't remember. But so this building's in 4 pieces, and we currently have all the other 3 pieces leased, and this is the last piece.
Correct.
So we don't actually occupy any of that building ourselves yet.
So basically, the transit operator store, who provides the South County Transit Services under a joint agreement between the city and Sacramento County. So they're the operator, and they do occupy one of the larger suites there in the southwest corner.
Okay.
Correct.
So we'll have. So if we approve this lease, then we're going to have 4 tenants in that building now.
Correct. Yeah, this is a small space, just kind of what they call a dead storage. There's no office, or frontage, bathroom facility, and this was formerly used by Cardinal Glass just to store equipment and materials. And then in June of 21, they vacated the space, and so we've been marketing it since that time to try to find a tenant. And so we've been fortunate finally to land a tenant. So yeah.
So do you have a rough number? Just last question on this one's $4,100 a month. I mean, do you roughly know what we bring in on that building now for rent?
On the building with this, we'll probably bring in right around $250,000 a year. So.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, it's a good investment then. All right. Well, that's all I had. And again, apologize not asking those in advance, but I appreciate your time.
Sure. My pleasure. Thanks.
Is there any public comment on these particular items, being that I pulled them from the consent?
No public comment.
Okay. Council, you have any comments? Okay. With that, I'll be looking for a motion to approve items M5 and M6. These are the amendment to number 1 to task order number 5 with Interwest Consultant Group for improvement plan review services for Walnut Avenue Townhome Project. And item 6 is the 5-year lease agreement with S&L Wholesale for warehouse space at 140 Enterprise Court in the city of Galt, exempt from CEQA under 15301.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Vandenberg.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Sandu. Can I have a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Sandu. Aye. Councilmember Papineau.
Aye.
Councilmember Vandenberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Lozano.
Aye.
Mayor Farmer.
Aye. Items approved 5-0. Moving on to item N, scheduled matters, notice of public hearing. First item, N1, is going to be the second reading and adoption of an ordinance repealing and readopting Chapter 1504 of the Galt Municipal Code relating to buildings and construction, and adopting the 2022 editions of the California Building Code standard codes, exempt under 15061B 3 of CEQA. Mr. Hoffman.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. At your November 15th City Council meeting, we introduced this ordinance. This process is a little bit different since we're basically adopting a set of standards that are adopted by California. We hold an introduction to the item, and this is actually your public hearing. So at November 15th, we introduced this item. Again, this is your 2022 building code standards. Tonight, we are looking to hold the public hearing, asking you to open the public hearing, take in any comments, and then again, the second reading of that ordinance. Tonight with me is your building official, Zach Carver, and we just wanted to kind of remind you what the big items were, what the changes were from the 2019 California Code to 2022. I think the bigger leap we saw in codes was from 2016 to 2019. Energy code really increased, and we saw a lot of changes throughout the codes. This year's really been tailored down, and I want Zach to kind of give you an overview again, what we saw as those major changes. Zach?
Thanks, Craig. Good evening, City Council members. So, as mentioned, it's a new code every 3 years. It'll become effective on January 1st, 2023. Some of the significant changes we discussed were added safety for emergency storage systems, your storage batteries for homes and commercial buildings. Also, features for aging in place and fall protection, which was going to allow people to live in their homes longer through some of these changes. And then a lot of the code changes are driven by the energy code, and so there's additional energy and water saving features that are required on residential and commercial buildings.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and then we'll, so the public hearing on this item is now open. If you would like to speak on this, you may come to the podium. Council, while we're waiting for that, any of you have any questions for Zach or Craig? Okay. Anybody in the room wish to speak on this item? All right. Do we have to field comments online?
No public comment.
None. Okay. All right. With that, then I will be closing the public hearing and looking for a motion to.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Yes, sir.
maybe have a
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Carver, sorry about that because number 15 I was not there. Just a very quick question. The building code is going to change for 2019 to 2022, right?
That's correct, yes.
What are the major changes as the commercial and residential?
Probably most of the major ones are the ones that we just discussed. As far as a lot of them are about the energy code and trying to, the state is driving towards more electric and less gas in homes and buildings. They're step by step trying to implement that over the next few code cycles.
Yeah, but on the residential side, what's the XD change? I know the energy, they have a different state asking different thing to change. What the actually we going to in a code change from 19 to 22 in the residential? Like, and if somebody going to build a house.
Sure. So one of the changes that we talked about was the water heaters. And so right now you can have a gas water heater, but you must plan to change that out to an electric water heater if you want to. And so infrastructure has to be put into place. Electrical has to be run to that area. A designated area has to be set aside for someone who wants to eventually change that out, whether it's right away or after. Includes even on remodels. If you want to add a second water heater to your home on an addition, that would have to be an electric water heater at this point.
All right, thank you.
Again, we didn't see that many changes going from 2019 to 2022, but that's not to say that you aren't going to see a number of changes going from 2022 to 2025. We're really seeing this push where you're going to see the electrification of houses. You're going to see a move in California moving from natural gas, and that's really what we're seeing with energy driven. But the changes weren't that extreme.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Zach. All right, with that, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of an ordinance number 2022-10 of the City of Galt, repealing and replacing Chapter 15.04 of the Galt Municipal Code related to buildings and construction and making local amendments.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Vandenberg. Seconded by Councilman Papineau. Can I have a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Sandu?
Aye.
Councilmember Papineau?
Aye.
Councilmember Vandenberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Lozano?
Aye.
Mayor Farmer?
Aye. Item approved 5-0. Next is item N2, the second reading and adoption of an ordinance repealing and readopting Chapter 15.28 of the Galt Municipal Code relating to building and construction and adopting the 2022 edition of the California Fire Code, CEQA exempt under Section 15061B3. Mr. Hoffman.
Sure. And again, Mayor, members of the council, much like you saw with the previous item, we heard an introduction of this item back on November 15th. We set the public hearing for tonight. We have our fire marshal, Lance Ray, with us tonight. Again, I even think in fire code, we didn't see a lot of changes. We did discuss those last time. A lot of those battery storage, what we're seeing with electrical, and what fire measures we're going to have with those. And I turn this back over to our fire marshal for a better discussion about those items.
Thank you, Craig. Mayor, council members, yeah, we had a very similar kind of the code changes were not as significant. If you'll remember in your packet from 2 weeks ago, we did do a side-by-side comparison that showed you the list of changes. There was quite a few corrections. They'll make minor changes, but any change to the code, we did go ahead and outline for you. We did add back in the NFPA 13R fire sprinkler systems that we talked about, which are the CPVC pipes that would be allowed in multifamily. We added that so developers would have that as an option. And we continued to really codify what we've been doing in this community since 2006. We've started to put it down so that there's nobody is surprised by any of the things that we do. So there's your code sections and then there's your standards. And we started to make those that are very consistent so that if you come to build here in Galt or you're building somewhere else in Sacramento County, we've worked with our other fire partners to have a very specific set of rules. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any of the questions you may have.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. So the public hearing is now open. Council, do you have any questions for our fire inspector on this topic? I have a question, just curiosity. As a fire inspector, is there anything that you were disappointed that is not in the updated code that you would like to see as a fireman?
So we we get specifically for the communities we deal with right now. As somebody that does this every day, I focus on access and water. The communities that we protect, we have sufficient access and water to do our job. As you get into the older buildings, there's some provisions that allow our larger cities that are charter cities will kind of go back into older buildings and enforce upgrades. And I don't think we have the threat to warrant that. So no, I think that the fire codes that are adopted by this council, our other councils, and also by the county are sufficient to protect the city that we have.
Okay, thank you for your input. Do we have anybody in the room wishing to speak on this item? Do we have any comments online, Tina?
No public comment.
All right. Well, with that, I will be closing the public hearing on this item and be looking for a motion to approve second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2022-11 of the City of Galt. I'm sorry, the City Council of the City of Galt repealing and re-adopting Chapter 15.28 of the Galt Municipal Code relating to buildings and construction and adopting by reference the 2022 California Fire Code and making local adjustments. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Vandenberg, seconded by Vice Mayor Sandu. Can I have a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Sandu?
Aye.
Councilmember Papineau?
Aye.
Councilmember Vandenberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Lozano?
Aye.
Mayor Farmer?
Aye. Approved 5-0. Thank you for your patience tonight, gentlemen. All right, moving on to our regular calendar. Item tonight is going to be from the Finance Department. Subject is going to be to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 1304 of the Galt Municipal Code and adopt a resolution approving the policy on discontinuation of residential water service. Mr. Boring.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's agenda is to adopt the policy on discontinuation of residential water service and introduce the proposed change to Chapter 13.04 of the Galt Municipal Code to comply with Senate Bill 998. A little bit of background, the Senate Bill 998, known as the Water Shutoff Protection Act, was approved by the state in 2018 and is intended to minimize the number of Californians who lose access to water service due to their inability to pay. And the effective date for the city of Galt was February 1st, 2020. Some of the requirements for SB 998 is you must have a written discontinuation policies available in various languages. In Galt, we have it available in English, Chinese, Korean, Spanish, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. Your policy must contain certain information and be posted on the city's website. We may not discontinue residential water service due to delinquent payment until payments are delinquent for at least 60 days. Water systems must attempt to notify customers before any discontinuation occurs. And there are specific scenarios where we're not allowed to discontinue water service. And it also limits reconnection fees that can be charged for certain low-income customers. So the city has been in compliant with SB 998. We posted a copy of the discontinuation policy on our website prior to February 1st, 2020. However, we haven't brought an item to council yet because we haven't discontinued water service since prior to that. We were recovering from the cyber attack, and then during COVID, the state put a moratorium on discontinuing water services. So now that the state moratorium has ended and we've ended our local emergency, we're transitioning back to normal operations. So in order to resume discontinuing water service for non-payment, we need to formally adopt the policy and then amend the Galt Municipal Code. So I'm available if you have any questions.
All right. Any questions from council? Nope. All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Boring. So with that, I'll be looking for a motion to adopt a resolution approving the policy on discontinuation. I'm sorry. Do we have public comment? Thanks. I heard your mic scratching. I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. Do you have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
All right. All right. With that, I'll be looking for a motion to adopt a resolution approving the policy on discontinuation of residential water service, authorizing the city manager and finance director to implement the policy and make technical corrections that may be required by SB 998.
So moved.
Moved by Vandenberg.
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Sandu. Can I have roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Sandu.
Aye.
Councilmember Papineau.
Aye.
Councilmember Vandenberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Lozano.
Aye.
Mayor Farmer.
Aye.
And we also have to introduce a motion to introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance as well.
Okay, I skipped over. I was at 3. All right, looking for a motion to introduce. Do I need to read it?
Read the title so then we don't have to read the whole ordinance.
Okay. Introduce and waive the first reading by title only, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Galt amending Chapter 1304 of the Galt Municipal Code to comply with SB 998, the Water Shutoff Protection Act.
So moved.
Moved by Lozano. I will second that. Can I have a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Sandu.
Aye.
Councilmember Papineau.
Aye.
Councilmember Vandenberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Lozano.
Aye.
Mayor Farmer.
Aye. Item approved 5-0. Thank you, Matt. All right, next item. Thank you for the wait. Will be from the Parks and Rec Department. Item is the Saturday Market 2022 review.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm excited to share with you the outcome of our Saturday market and what our team was able to create and provide to the community in the time that we were given. So when we were given this task, we took and made it a goal to provide a vibrant and community event for the whole family. It's not working.
Is it on the side?
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So once we were tasked again, we developed a marketing plan on how we could make this successful and bring a vibrant event to the community. So we started with branding. We looked at the vision and developing a concept, uniformed the design, and made sure the marketing colors were just as vibrant as our developing concept. So above the branding portion, it shows our logo and what we focused on, and every marketing piece that we had represented that logo that went out across for all our mailing promotions. We did a mass mailing promotion to all Galt community residents, which was a postcard that had the Saturday market on one side, as well as having all our activities that the Parks and Recreation special events have upcoming. So we were able not only to market the Saturday market, but our summer concert series, our movies, and other upcoming events for the community. We were also able to do a lot of public relations with the community and how to build those relationships with local businesses, such as inviting the nonprofits to be vendors, as well as local businesses to sponsor this event, and really bring awareness that this event is for the community and there's family activities out there. We went on social media quite heavily to make sure that social media knew what the themes were each month. We shared and tagged vendors that we had that were coming out this month. We also made sure that any of our sponsors, our partnerships that we had, were already recognized on our social media outlets as well. These are three of our main sponsors and partners that we had throughout this spring and summer series. Brian King was a huge benefit to have out there, as he provided some of the entertainment that we had and was very supportive in sharing his knowledge and recommendations of what he thought we could bring to our market. Papas and Wings has continued to support and partner with us in this new adventure, as well as was a continuous sponsor at the Friday Night Farmers Market. San Joaquin Certified Farmers Market was the initial partnership that we had for the Friday Night Farmers Market, but then we switched over to the organization of From the Fields and More. They have partnerships with the San Joaquin Certified Farmers Market, but are also heavily involved in artisan vendors, so we partnered with him, and we built a partnership throughout the series. So each month I'll go through what the theme was, how many vendors we had, as well as it has a difference in what Field and More promotions of the vendors that they had. So April theme, Touch a Truck was the theme. This was a heavy attendance for this event, as we had it 4 years ago, and it was really a big draw for the community. As well as we invited, we had collaborations with McCaffrey Middle School to partner with that theme as well. So the city was able to provide artisans of 12 vendors. We had 10 food vendors, and informational vendors was 3. Fields and More brought 16 artisan and 3 food vendors, which a total of 44 vendors was on site. We also had the store ridership program that was that month that we kicked off to see if we could get anybody to ride on that partnership program. In May, we tried to do collaborations with Compadres and one of the local car clubs for our Cinco de Mayo celebration. We had 19 vendors from the city, 11 food vendors, and we also had 4 informational vendors. Field and More, again, with their partnership, they brought 19 and 8 food vendors, which is a total of 61 vendors. And again, Compadres bought their dancing horses. We had dancers out there, and then we had a car show that took over half of the street. So our June theme was a country and western theme, and we had a barbecue competition. We had 19 artisan vendors, 8 food vendors, and 4 informational vendors that were brought from the city. Field and More brought 19 and 10 food vendors, a total of 60. And again, the collaboration was with Mosqueda Junior Trucking, which is also Papas and Wings. They provided the barrels that we had, the wine barrel racing, and we also had some other assistance from the barbecue competitors as well. Our 4th of July was one of the biggest that we had. We had artisan vendors of 20, food vendors 13, informational was 7, and artisan vendors from Field and More was 28 and 14 for food, which was a total of 82. And again, this was a huge event that we had out there for the series. August was our safety expo. We had the 17 vendors. Artisan food vendors was 12. Informational was the 6, and Field and More was 25 and 7, a total of 67 vendors. We collaborated with Galt PD and Consumnes Fire for their safety expo. And again, the partnerships that we had for each of these themes was really to bring more community engagement and involvement to come out so we could attract more foot traffic. For September, we had our back to school event we did like for Friday Night Farmers Market. So we brought that back again. We had 16 vendors from the city, 5 food vendors, and informational was 4. Field and More provided 18, and food vendors was 3. Our total was 47, and I have on there a little sun on there because that was one of the hottest days that we had for the series, 107 degrees, but we were still able to get 47 vendors out there. So we tried to make it work. We had collaborations with Real Life Church, and then for youth entrepreneurs that we offered vendor space to have out there of no charge that they could sell their product that they made. So we did have that. For October, we had our harvest market. We had 16 artisan vendors from the city. City food is 8 and informational was 9. Field and More provided the 19 artisan, and food vendors was 2. Our total vendors was 54. And again, the partnership we had was Papa's and Wings and SD Seifert, and they provided the hay. Papa's and Wings provided pumpkins and some of the other arts and craft projects that we had. So we received this data from the company that we just recently went with, Placer, and they provided the numbers based on the visits. So you see that the highest number that we had was 2 of them was July and September, and then of course the ending of October. So these are the numbers based on the data that we received from the company we recently have gone through. So what our vendors and our customers have to say. So one of our vendors had to say one of my favorite places to sell because of the customers. What our customers had to say is they're excited to see such an increase of vendors. What our customers had to say again is let's make it year-round. It's excellent for the community. And again, our vendors, I love all the festival themes each time we come to sell. So based on the budget that we were given from April through October, the allocated budget has the breakdown of each line item and what our grand total was of expenditures that we spent. Some of the things that we didn't spend this series was training. National Farmers Market Coalition didn't have a training for the farmers market this year, so hopefully they'll bring that back so we're able to do that. And there wasn't any dues at this time because Field and More was able to take over the health permit fee, so we didn't have to pay that this time. The Saturday market revenue, to identify that more, the artisan vendors, it was $50 per space. We had a total of 119 vendors. The $6,350 was the revenue. It is a little bit off just because we've had vendors book multiple spaces, so it reflects that. As well as informational vendors we had 37, and we're able to bring in that revenue, and then food and prepackaged was that amount. Our sponsorship was from Papa's and Wings, which he was able to provide to us, and the total revenue was the $13,750, and our revenue goal was $15,600. So this has our breakdown of our overall gain and loss. So if you look at the revenue and where we're at the bottom line, we were only negative the $2,131.81. Other items that were supported by the market as well as Parks and Rec and Public Works that is not in our expenditure report is because of the demand of the number of attendants as well as the vendors, the street closures that we had to do because we weren't anticipating having the turnaround that we did. We did have to call in rec workers for extra cleaning. Parks maintenance workers had to help us with stage setup as well as electrical. And Public Works assisted us with the street closure for 4th of July. So those were not captured in the expenditure report. So what we're looking for today is, would you like us to come back to bring a proposal for the upcoming 2023 Saturday Market Series? And then that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jackie, for that presentation. First off, I would like to say that if Councilman Vandenberg ever wants to challenge me to barrel racing again and get a second whooping, he's welcome to come do that. You guys did a phenomenal job. Seriously, I know I came out, every time I was there, which was most of them, and told you guys afterwards and your staff, how much I appreciated the hard work. But you guys seriously did a great job. I mean, obviously, I have some thoughts I'll share with you, just a little tiny tweaks that I would maybe like to throw out there, but they're small. But overall, you guys did a great job. I know this really came from the idea of transitioning the flea market, our main market, to a weekend operation, which I still very much believe that is the end goal. However, at this time, I actually would support seeing a proposal for another year in the existing location, because I think it was great, and I heard tons of great feedback on it. Just a few things that I think just criticism over the whole time was more produce vendors. That's probably the one thing I heard the most, is they wanted to see more produce, which I think shade structures. So there was talk about maybe, because with the food people, they wanted to be able to sit down and eat somewhere, and there was not really a lot of shade. Of course, summer months being the main thing. So maybe like a tent with some tables that were shade where people could sit down. That was another thing, was additional restrooms, which I think you guys addressed halfway through, but I got some of the business on 4th, especially my business, was impacted heavily by restroom use. And so I think that was taken care of. And then just one thing was just a thought, is maybe talk about hour adjustments. I know in the summer months when it's super hot, and I know you advertise it and maybe it's too hard to do with literature, but maybe if instead of like a 10 to 3, we could do like a 9 to 2 during the summer months, or something where people could come out earlier and get out of there earlier before the heat sets in. So these are the only things that I heard from people, or that I thought about through the whole thing. I think the themes are great. I think maybe couple new themes maybe. Obviously, like with any business, you evaluate what was a hit and what wasn't, and make some adjustments and improve on what you did. But overall, great job.
Thank you.
Yes. So, council, anything for Jackie?
I'm not sure what slide number it is, but the Saturday market revenue, you said 119. I added up all the totals from each month, and I came up with 415 doing some rather quick math. But that doesn't seem to be, that's far short of that. Are you separating out what was in blue on the previous slides?
You're talking for the theme?
Yeah, there. What's in blue? That's from.
So the blue revenue does not count to the city. Field and More was a partner, so any vendors, our food vendors, they brought in, they collected that revenue.
Okay, that's what I figured. And then, so how beneficial do you think they were to the success?
Extremely beneficial. So they had connections with San Joaquin County vendors, not only the produce, but artisan vendors. So our communication to be able to get out to new vendors was beneficial to have them at the table with us.
Okay, great. I really think the themes, you guys did a great job of having themes. It was obviously well attended and popular. You could just tell by the volume of people. It's actually surprising to see October was the busiest with 3,600, considering it was the hottest time of the year. Before I had read through all this, I would have thought it'd be wise to move it earlier, an hour or two. And I don't know about changing it, because I think if you're consistent, people remember that more than what's going on. I'm curious, do you think you could, or the city could, have enough themes to expand it further months, or do it twice a month?
I think there's a possibility, yeah.
Okay. And how many vendors would we need average to break even or start making money?
I would say about 125. So there was a lot of needs that we need in the future for this event to continue to put it on, such as like a stage. We didn't have the capabilities of the correct stage, the PA system. So really being able to push more vendors. With talks with Field and More, we're looking at, if this is a go, then we're looking at expanding to doing antiques and changing the layout. So there's possibilities out there. It's just getting the word out more often.
If I had the feeling if there was one of the negatives, it was, I do wish there was more produce, but the vendors, once they got past Brewster's, they seemed a little bit on an island. Is there any plans to go out to the grass portion or move it across C Street?
Yeah, so we've already had conversations of what other layouts can we do to benefit those vendors, because we did hear feedback that the foot traffic wasn't as heavy. Even with putting entertainment, it wasn't as heavy going past Brewster's. So we're looking at aligning the layout over to the grass area, or maybe we expand a little bit further and put the vendors on the street as opposed to the entertainment. So there is different ideas that is coming out.
Has anyone thought about moving down C Street and maybe just closing off that block too? You could have vendors on both sides and it's in the shade a little.
We did, there was conversation, but I think it's street closure cost and having the manpower to do that.
Sure. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Jackie, thank you for giving me the presentation. There is one question. Overall, we lose some money, right? Mm-hmm. How much? Maybe around $2,000?
Yeah, it was about $2,100.
$2,100. And thank you for this, event you guys organized. Thank you for last year. And I'm looking forward to bring the proposal. So when you bring the proposal, we can look them up if there is need any changes. The only clarification on market expense. There is certain things you mentioned, like in 1620 training, $400 allocator, right? Mm-hmm. And it does not change.
Right.
It does not use. What was the reason we don't change?
We didn't use it. We when we put that in, there's a National Farmers Market Coalition that does a training on farmers market guidelines, how to generate more produce vendors, how to educate the produce vendors to have the proper permits. And because of COVID and coming back, they weren't having that training. So that was something that we weren't doing.
So if we're going to bring the back, this expense might be incurred, right?
Right.
Same thing in the next 6028 and due $350. What that
Right, so that would be our health permit fees. With Fields and More, they took on the expenses for the health permit, so they had to get an umbrella health permit to run this event. And Fields and More took that cost, and we did not have to pay it this year. So if Fields and More isn't at the table next year and they're not willing, then we would have to take on that cost.
The next item is 6066, equipment repair and maintenance. On the report is allocated $1,220. It does not use?
It was not used. A lot of the equipment that we had, we utilized the market's equipment, and we didn't anticipate needing the brooms or anything, and we had those at the market, so we saved on that cost at this.
So the next year, if we decide, then what do you think? It may be...
Yeah, we would definitely have to look into it because of the growth of the event and the demand that we received this year. We would need to purchase it.
And the last one is 6078 solid waste disposal. And $3,000 in the report is allocated, but it does not use.
Right. So all of the disposal of the trash was collected at the market, so the market absorbed that cost.
So what do you think next year it will be?
It most likely we would have to absorb that cost, yes.
So if we absorb all these costs, it will be more expensive, right?
Right.
All right, thank you, just for the clarification.
Yeah, the only question I had was about the solid waste, and you've addressed that. And otherwise, I would say congratulations on the job well done. I would encourage you guys to continue. And sounds like you've absorbed a lot of feedback and know how practically you can expand. So,
thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Thank you very much for not only the presentation, but heading this thing up overnight. I know it was a quick turnaround, and I thought you and the staff did an excellent job of driving this, and it was very thoughtful. I appreciate that. One of the questions I had was daily. Could you go back to the just one of the months with all the vendors? There you go. So how many How many vendor spaces do you have available in total?
On the promenade, there's about 75.
Okay, so we could, I mean, for instance, this is October. We could go up another 20 vendors. Okay.
Yeah, right. And even, so if you look at, I think 4th of July.
Yeah,
So 4th of July, we had to move vendors into the street because we were too much in promenade.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. And I like the partnership with Fields and More Promotions. I mean, that's, you make a good point. I mean, they have these contacts that are already in place. And so I think that's a great thing to continue. I would be in favor of bringing back a proposal to extend the amount of months that we do this. Maybe not January or December, but the balance of them. I think that would be a good idea. I love the theming that went along with each month. I thought that was pretty good. And again, one opinion, but along with that proposal, we've talked a lot about equipment and maintenance and stuff like that. If there is equipment that the market has that needs to be replaced with ARPA money or stuff like that, I think that would be beneficial to bring in your proposal what you're going to need. And I would say shoot for the stars so that we can get you the equipment that you need to make this successful and easier on you. I mean, if it's barricades where you don't need a body to put there now, let's think about those things because I agree. I think this is just the beginning, and our community really enjoyed it. Couple of the improvements, all the improvements that I thought of have already been talked about. So appreciate it, Jackie. Thank you so much for your work and continued success.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jackie, I think the music, what I liked the most is when you guys had live music, and I think you had it every time, I think.
We tried.
Yeah, that's a big hit. If we could definitely have a stage and maybe have that on, on the grass or wherever, but that, I think that would be whatever. And I would be supportive of maybe expanding the months a little bit too, like so maybe into November. Maybe November could be the harvest, and maybe October could be like an Oktoberfest kind of theme or something. I don't know. You guys are creative, but maybe expansion a little bit. And I think, and talking about the best use of dollars too, is I keep circling back now that Mike's in the room. It's too bad we really couldn't look at doing those the things in the crosswalks at the intersections where Brewster's is and over see where we had talked about if we had those holes in that strip of concrete where we could drop the Balliard things in there and not have to have Public Works bring barriers and all that kinds of stuff in. Just something to consider that maybe cost effective. I mean, it would cost up front, but maybe if we're going to be doing events down there, it may be way more cost effective over the long haul as far as staff and stuff. I don't know, just thought. But anyways. So yeah, great job. Look forward to seeing what you guys have proposed for the year ahead. And thank you again.
Mr. Mayor, if I have one more question, if you don't mind. You have received the most feedback. You've been at every event, right? And what would you like to see?
For the Saturday market?
Yep.
I'd like to grow it to have artisan vendors. Antique vendors. That's a hard question because I have a lot of dreams for events. So I would like antique. My goal is to bring more produce vendors there. So that is one of our goals. And I think just continuing to keep the vibe of the community and of entertainment out there, that's what I would like to see out there.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Can I ask, did we have a third on expanding the months?
Yes.
Got to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, with that, we'll move on to our next item, which is, actually, do we have any public comment on the Saturday market from the full arena here in the?
We have Director Solis's hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to get clarification. So February through November, you want shade and tables. Was there anything else you wanted us to include in this proposal?
Well, I think we just leave, I mean, your staff seems to be the most educated. I was just suggesting maybe in the hot months, be mindful of shade for tables. I don't know if February would be necessary, but, save where we can, but that's just my thoughts.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure before we finish that proposal.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Armando. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item P, communication. Do we have any this evening?
None this evening.
All right. Q, city clerk's report.
Nothing.
Item R, comments by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Parks and Rec Department would like to thank Real Life Church for their volunteer work day out at the library on November 19th. Next up, Chief Kalinowski.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So a couple things I want to update you about the public, so there's some general awareness. So I need to go to my social media to make sure I'm on point here. So on Saturday, December 10th from 10 to 2, we'll be at Walmart for donations of toys for the toy drive. We heard some about that in award earlier. So we will have patrol staff in partnership with the fire department there, again from 10 to 2 at Walmart. That was the brainchild behind that was actually Officer Little, who brought that forward to us to make it happen. So we turned that around pretty quick. So I was glad to see that. Then, as I've mentioned a couple times, on Tuesday, December 13th from 5 to 7 at the PD, we will have how Galt PD Stop the Grinch, basically a PD open house and a reading and some different activities for our youth. So that'll be happening again on Tuesday, December 13th. That's, I think, next week already. Then the last thing, only because we will meet only twice before this event occurs, we won't see you in January before that occurs, is the 10th annual Remembrance and Memorial for Kevin Ton will occur on Sunday, January 15th. So we will be at the memorial out here at noon. Those of you who are aware of this procedure, we are for a moment of silence at the crime scene at 11:30. Then we move over here to the memorial at noon. And then there'll be a small reception following for city staff and elected officials, including family and department members at the family's wishes. So there'll be more that you'll get about that, but I wanted you to get that on your calendar early because Christmas is coming and then I won't see you before that occurs. So again, that's Sunday, noon, for the formal portion here at the monument. And that's all I have for the police department tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Sorry, Director Mike Sulling.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Just a couple of things. This Saturday, we're having a used oil filter event over at the O'Reilly Auto Parts over on Twin Cities. And basically, the public is invited. You can bring up to 2 oil filters, and they'll be replaced with new ones. So there's an opportunity there. And you can also bring your used oil, and they will take that, no charge. So that's happening again this Saturday over there at the O'Reilly, and that's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then the other thing I wanted to just another reminder on our movement toward this new mandate where we have to start recycling our food waste and organics. Cal Waste, I think, sent these type of flyers to everybody in the community. So it's a good flyer. You've got some really good pictures as to what's acceptable in that organics with your green waste cart, basically, and what's not. One of the, I guess, question marks was for a bit is food, soil, paper, and that kind of thing acceptable? And as you'll see on the picture, includes things like pizza boxes, coffee grounds with the coffee filter, food bags and stuff from like fast food and stuff, soiled napkins. So those kinds of things, or paper towels, those kinds of things are acceptable in there. What's not acceptable essentially is anything that's either like wax or some kind of film coated, plastic coated, like a milk carton. I mean, while it's paper, it's wax coated, so that is not acceptable. But anyway, there's some good pictures on there, and just a good reminder that starts January 1st, and the carts are going to be rolling out from Cal Waste, I think, in the coming weeks. So So stay tuned for that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes staff comments.
All right, thank you, sir. Moving on to comments by city staff, members, and future agenda items. Mr. Vice Mayor.
First of all, thank you for staff. Mr. Hines, give us a good report on each agenda item. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for public comment. Thank you for anybody sitting in the chamber from last 2.5 hours. Thank you for the local media. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilman Papineau.
So at the last meeting, I wished everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and I thought sarcastically said maybe by Thanksgiving we'd have a vote count. But apparently, alas, we don't. So let's just follow up. But no, thank you all for all the hard work, and that's all I have.
Mr. Vandenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you to staff for all the hard work. Thank you for putting up with us. I think after today, though it is, congratulations to my fellow council members for successful campaigns, and looking forward to working with you where we can. I hope everybody has a great holiday season. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilman Lozano.
Yeah, I just want a couple of things. Just want to thank Mr. Selling. I didn't mention it when the item was pulled off consent, but thank you for working on that property that we have and getting that filled. That's huge, and I know when we acquired that property, that was the goal, is to have some generation of revenue out of it, and so now that it's filled, it's good work. Thank you. Just wanted to mention that last Friday in the evening, we had the Star Dinner over at Cibola Center. There was about 40 clients that came, and the Rotary, Galt Sunrise Rotary made dinner for our Star participants, and Santa came, and we provided presents as well, and that was really awesome. So I want to thank the Rotary Club and Parks and Rec staff for putting that on. That's a monthly event that happens. Just so happens in December, or one of our local nonprofits assists with providing that for our kids. And again, happy holidays. I hope everybody has time with their family, and I appreciate staff and hard work, and certainly the community for coming out and providing additional information that we could use to make decisions up here. So thanks.
First, I wanted to thank the Parks and Rec staff and the PD and Public Works for all your guys' hard work during the lighting of the night. Because I know it was a huge joint effort. Parks and Rec, for planning the event with inclement weather obviously looming, not knowing what the turnout was going to be. I was actually surprisingly shocked of how good the parade was and how many people still came out with it just pouring rain. The tree lighting was fabulous. Armando, if you're still watching, the decorations are great. All that went off. Thank you, Mr. Hines, for facilitating the whole event as well. PD for working out there. Your officers are out there, guiding traffic in the wet, and then Public Works for cleaning up after the fanfare is all done. Your guys were out there well into the night. When I left the coffee shop, it was late, and they were still out there in rain suits, and it was pouring rain, and they were moving barriers and stuff. So pass along our thanks for that. And then congratulations to my fellow Vice Mayor Sandu, Councilman Lozano. Congratulations on your re-elections. And to all the other elected officials out there, congratulations to our new county supervisor, Pat Hume, who I know will be a great asset to us. Big shoes to fill with Natoli being gone, but I feel like he's going to do the best job he can, and I look forward to working with him for the betterment of Galt. And to all the other school board members and things who I think pretty much all the races are pretty much wrapped up. So congratulations to all of them, and look forward to working with all of you. And most importantly, the passage of Measure Q. As everybody knows, I was very passionate about that, and I'm glad that we took a swing for that. It's a big swing at the plate, and we were successful. And I want to thank everybody involved, from the city manager down to the city attorney, staff, Amy Mendez working with the people at the ballot. I mean, so many people, I don't really know all their names, but thank you for that. And I think, as I was telling the vice mayor yesterday, that I think looking back at the end of our terms, this will be the one item that I think will be most significant that we were able to accomplish on this council. And I think it'll be a big change for the community in the future of Parks and Rec in this town. So good news. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:37. Good night, everybody.